right, we're rolling. All right, Jeff, can you just tell us a little bit about your relationship with your grandfather?
My relationship with my grandfather spans most of my life. He was an important part of my life just because of the relationship that he had with my mother. And we would occasionally visit. They would come and visit us. So we had a good relationship. Getting to know him really well when he moved on to our property when I was middle school aged. They had just retired from their mission in Flagstaff and were coming to start a new chapter in their life by living close to us, which was near some other members of the family as well. And as a child, I remember just spending time with him. He was one of those guys that was of his generation in that he was good at everything. He was a woodworker, he was a beekeeper, he was a gardener, he was a carpenter in building houses. He could do just about anything, and we just spent a lot of time learning from him just by watching him. And also being sort of at his feet when he would share stories about his time among the various Native American groups that he was working with or had worked with. And then in 1980, I got a chance to travel with him on one of his last speaking tours around the United States for about 3 months, covering about 13,000 miles and numerous Plymouth Brethren assemblies and other churches where he was sharing his studies in Mormonism, leading workshops in that, how to witness to Mormons, as well as just preaching, sharing the gospel. And those were really important times for me as it kind of galvanized my understanding of who he was as a godly man.
What are some of your favorite memories of Gordon?
When he was in his prime, he was kind of a mountain of a man. He was very confident, very competent, very cordial, loved to talk to people, loved to share about his interests, which were numerous. He was not afraid of getting his hands dirty or teaching us how to get our hands dirty. He would eat our mud pies when we offered them to him in a great gesture of grandfatherly generosity. But he was always a very stable individual, very approachable, and very committed to his family. Was a kind of guy that you just wanted to be around. That was one of the things that was so great about being able to spend those 3 months with him. It really confirmed for me the relationship that we had.
What did you learn from your grandfather about why he started the college?
He was a man who was committed to mission from, I think, his childhood. I remember one of the stories was receiving a book about the indigenous peoples of North America from his uncle when he was just a child. Even, he says, before he was a Christian. And it spurred in him an interest in anthropology, in language, and then as he became a believer, began to spark a deep desire, a passion to spread the gospel to unreached peoples within the United States especially. And as he grew into manhood and began to take some responsibility for that vision, he spent a lot of time in small villages in the Pacific Northwest, talking to Native peoples, talking to loggers in logging communities, starting Sunday schools, starting Bible clubs, and was very, very active in that very, very early age. That was back in the 1930s, during the Depression, when there was so much poverty. He was in people's homes, sharing the gospel, leading meetings, oftentimes, leaving his own family to do that, but was just very committed to the gospel and sharing that with as many people as he could.
Were there any stories he had about those early years of leading the college?
I think his general desire in being a part of what was then the Southwestern School of Mission was recognizing that he, as a white man, was always going to be limited in his ability to reach the people of the Southwest. He was oftentimes very apologetic for the struggles that he faced in evangelism as a white man, just because, as he would put it, the white man brought not just religion, but many other things as well, predation and destruction in their wake. And he realized that not only were was that the nature of the beast back in the day in terms of government interaction, but also in terms of Christians, that too often they fail to understand that they couldn't just impose a white man's God on other people, that they had to come in with the understanding that in many cases, these groups already had an understanding of what he would call the Most High God, which is an Old Testament concept that he believed applied to the indigenous peoples that he was encountering. That they were not foreign to the concept of a cosmology that included a creator. They understood that there was a Most High God that was to be worshipped and honored. And rather than starting with that, a lot of the Christian groups that preceded him just went in with the idea that these were savages that needed to be tamed somehow and needed to have a religion imposed upon them. So his desire in starting the mission school was to really work through the people of that area, allowing the indigenous peoples to go back onto the reservation to their own people and share the gospel, knowing that would be a much stronger, much more impactful way to evangelize and disciple the people that he cared so much about.
Is there anything else you'd like to tell us about Gordon or the start of Southwestern School of Mission?
Well, I think there was, and I just, this because I was reminding myself, going through some of his writings and even his Bible that he used on the trip that I took with him that somehow ended up in my possession, his readiness to share the gospel with people. There was one story he told in one of his books about I think it was up in the Pacific Northwest, that he was invited to speak in a kind of an impromptu gathering, just because of the nature of the people there, that when they got together, they stayed together. And he ended up singing songs with them, preaching 2 different sermons, praying with them, and sharing the gospel throughout an entire evening that didn't end until midnight. That was just kind of the nature of his character and his commitment to the people that he was burdened for. And that always has been something that's really impressed me, is understanding the gospel in a way that is not exclusive to Western civilization. He understood the gospel as something that is for everyone. And he recognized, and he would often cite Romans 1, the idea that God has put eternity in our hearts. He has made himself known through creation to all people, and that no one is without excuse. That's what he always built on. He always was determined to connect on that level and to allow people to tell their stories before he ever told his, to let them share their understanding of God and the nature of eternity, so that he could just add the parts that were missing. And it wasn't oftentimes an understanding of the Most High God that could just be connected then to the Son that the Most High God had, who had come to save them from their sin. So his approach to evangelism was always one that started with the people he was trying to reach, rather than bringing to them some prepackaged idea of what it meant to be a Christian. Then marveling, even humbly, at the way that these new Christians would really simplify the gospel. It was remarkable, his willingness to let them tell their story without his intrusion, even though it probably wouldn't impress somebody with great theological training or some seminary class, but the people that he was ministering to were able to synthesize and simplify the gospel in a way that made it possible for them to take their powerful stories of redemption back to the reservation and tell that to the people that they loved. His entire approach, I think, was really refreshing, and something that I think is missing even in our day. So it's a legacy that I admire, obviously fail to live up to oftentimes, but very grateful for having been a part of.